Hello and welcome to Transfermarkt TV. My name is Stefan and I'm joined by my colleagues Ben and Euan today, and we are here to discuss the latest goings on at Arsenal and who they could be signing in the summer transfer window. Club of that size are linked with literally hundreds of players every summer transfer window, but there's definitely a trend beginning to grow with regards to the amount of strikers that have been linked to Mikel Arteta's team. And today we want to discuss whether any of those rumours have any validity behind them and whether Arsenal even need another striker. So, Ben, let's just jump straight into this. Arsenal have been linked with a lot of strikers recently. Perhaps the most obvious one is Victor Gyökeres, the Sporting Lisbon player who's doing tremendously well in the Portuguese top flight. It's one of these rumours that has been lingering around Arsenal for so long. He seems to be the new Julian Brandt, if you will. I mean, we don't really have to discuss how good a player he is. I think people probably know that. But, I mean, what is your kind of thoughts in terms of whether Arsenal actually need a striker and whether spending money on a new number 9 is a smart move by Arteta and his backroom staff?
Yeah, well, it's sort of been going on for about 18 months now, isn't it? The whole media basically falling out saying Arsenal need to sign a number 9, basically ever since Erling Haaland came to the Premier League. And they're putting up ridiculous numbers at Manchester City. Arsenal obviously been just behind those. The call is constantly to bring in a striker. Personally, I do not see a striker out there who Arsenal could bring in this summer who's going to be a better number 9 than Kai Havertz. I don't see a striker out there that's going to add more to the team than Kai Havertz. Maybe you could potentially bring someone in who's going to maybe get 18 to 20 Premier League goals. Then they're not going to add anywhere near as much in terms of the overall team play as Havertz does for that Arsenal team. He's so important towards the end of the season. Gabriel Jesus is still an Arsenal player, and I still think there's an incredible player in there. It looks like he's going to have a knee operation this summer to try and which was holding him back for the last sort of 18 months. So you have that as an option as well. You also have the likes of Trossard that can play up there. For me, Arsenal should be prioritising bringing in a pacey, quick winger this summer, because if you look across Arsenal's front line, the only player with sort of raw speed is Gabriel Martinelli, and there's been such a heavy reliance on him to the point he had to play a lot of last season when he was badly out of form, because he's the only option Arsenal had in that sort of role. So for me, bringing in a quick winger such as maybe Euan Bakayoko, Pedro Neto, I know there's obviously injury problems to his name, but for me, I think there's other areas such as a fast winger and probably a centre midfielder Arsenal should be prioritising over splashing out for a striker, just because I just don't think there's a striker out there that can really take Arsenal to that next level that's available this summer.
Yeah, Euan, it's such an interesting kind of conundrum because, as Ben said, this kind of clamour for a striker maybe started with Erling Haaland joined the Premier League and all of a sudden number 9s were very fashionable. But as we've discussed on this channel this season, Man City's almost over-reliance on Haaland at times has actually at times almost seemed like a weakness for Pep Guardiola's team, in the sense that, you know, when he's not in the team, there's no one that can kind of score goals like that. But equally, you know, Pep more or less had to kind of change his tactics to kind of accommodate Haaland or accommodate just a number 9 in that side. And, you know, some Manchester City fans would argue that they actually played better before they had a big number 9 sitting in the box waiting for crosses all game. And equally, you then look at Arsenal, who are maybe a bit more like Pep's previous Man City side, where they have a more fluid kind of forward line. You know, Kai Havertz is technically the number 9, but he can probably play as a kind of false number 9. But they have a lot of midfield players, and you could maybe argue that the opposite end of that scale is a team like Arsenal, who are maybe over-reliant on midfielders to score and create goals. You know, Martin Odegaard, for example, is a playmaker who Arsenal hugely rely on, in my opinion. You know, I thought in those kind of ties against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, for example, if kind of Mark came out of the game, Arsenal do struggle for creativity. So it's that kind of balance, isn't it, between bringing in a number 9 and being over-reliant on them, or sticking with a system that doesn't have a number 9. And technically, I guess Kai Havertz may still count as one. But in that sense, you then don't have a clear route for goal.
Yeah, Ben makes a good point. You know, there's no point behind number 9 if the number 9 you bring in is not better than the options you already have at the club. I think there's a real dearth of top quality number 9s on the market, or just generally. I mean, a lot will probably depend on, you know, what Arsenal do with Eddie Nketiah. I know I read this week they're looking for, you know, upwards of 30-40 million for him, which I think is a little bit wishful thinking. But to be fair, they got a big fee for Florian Balogun, so if they can bring in good money for Nketiah, who should go in the summer because, you know, he needs minutes. He's not a regular at Arsenal. then you could invest that and bring in a number 9. But you can bring in a hybrid player who's maybe, like Ben said, is predominantly a winger, but can play at 9. That's very common these days. You see players like that. Who that is, I'm unsure. I do think Bukayo Saka is very settled on the right of that Arsenal attack. If Havertz is going to be number 9, and his form towards the tail end of last season probably justifies him starting as Arsenal starting number 9 next season. But the question mark is on that left hand side. I don't think Gabriel Martinelli had a very good season. Like Ben alluded to, you could look to bring someone in to provide competition and really push him in that area. So that might be the priority for Arteta. But I do think if Nketiah goes, then you could feasibly bring in maybe a wide player and a number 9. And because you need strength and depth. But Arsenal did score the second most goals in the Premier League last season with 91. It's only 5 behind Man City. So, goal scoring is generally not a problem for Arsenal in the league. I do think if you look at maybe the game against Bayern Munich, they maybe did lack that kind of X factor in the final third, especially kind of in the leg in Munich. So I think that's an area they will address in the summer.
Yeah. Well, Ben, just maybe to wrap us up, I guess that all kind of points to Kai Havertz, to bring it back to him for a moment. You mentioned that he should probably focus on bringing in wingers. Maybe need to bring in our left back if Zinchenko moves on, maybe in central midfielder if Thomas Partey moves on. But in terms of the forward line, in terms of that number 9 position, it's kind of Kai Havertz to lose. That puts a lot of pressure on him. He has talked a lot about it recently. He said, look, I now consider myself a number 9. It's where he plays for his national team, to mixed results to the Euros, admittedly. But, there's some kind of clamour for like Nicholas Füllkrug, who's a more old-fashioned kind of target man to play for Germany. But I guess it does kind of put a lot of pressure on Havertz to be that man for Arteta, because if they're not going to go out and sign a number 9, then all eyes are suddenly on Havertz to be that talisman and be that kind of attacking penalty box target man, a false number 9, whatever it takes from week to week. He has to be the man that fills that role fills that position in Arteta's tactics, isn't he?
Yeah, very true. But I think he's already proven he can deal with pressure. I don't think he's going to face more pressure in the position he was in at the start of last season after he came to Arsenal for a fee. Many people felt it was too much money from a rival in Chelsea and started fairly poorly in his first sort of 10 games, but really nervous. For him to turn that round from that position, when there was even a lot of Arsenal fans on his back at that point, I don't think he's going to get more pressurised than that. And he's already proved that he can come through that. And obviously, as we've mentioned, finished the season really strongly, ended up with 20 goal contributions in the Premier League alone, which is a good statistic when you consider he played almost probably half of the season as a centre midfielder. So I think he can deal with that pressure. And I think, Euan said it, he's justified, he deserves to start the season as Arsenal's number 9, in my opinion. I would have quite liked, I like the idea of bringing in Benjamin Sesko, because I feel like he's 21 years old. He wouldn't be expected to start every week, and he could sort of spend a couple of seasons learning Arteta's mould and give us that different option. But obviously that's he's committed his future for now to RB Leipzig, so maybe that could potentially be one for the following summer. But yeah, for me, Kai Havertz, he can deal with that pressure, and he deserves to start the season as Arsenal's main striker.
Yeah, all very interesting. Maybe Sesko could be one for the future. But you guys can also let us know in the comments below what you think. Do you think Arsenal need to sign a striker? Should they just cut their losses and go out and spend 100 million on Alexander Isak or Ivan Toney? Or do you think they're right to stick with Kai Havertz and should be focusing on other areas of the pitch? You can let us know in the comments below, but you can also head over to Transfermarkt and head over to the Arsenal forum, where you can check all the latest transfer news and discuss any topics you want about. Each player has their own thread over there as well, so you can chat about Kai Havertz, you can chat about all sorts of players as well. But until next time, we'll speak to you soon.